Hello again, and welcome to the final part of all Gaim's extended media. Christ, this has gone on for too long. Anywho, we have about 6 things to look through, though they're all really short by comparison. All of Gaim's Gaidens. So the plot is, Toei had more toys they wanted to sell, and we are now making commercials for said toys. Okay, there's technically a plot to these initial 4 ones, so Duke focuses on Ryoma facing an old friend from the past who's revived himself as part of this terror organization by the name of Black Bodhi. Zangetsu's focuses on the Kirishima past, Baron's Prince and the Pauper, basically. And then Knuckle has Zack returning to Zawami City to deal with probably the dumbest villain this series has had at this point, so I know I'm kind of combining all 4 of these, but they're all essentially just an episode of the show, so I guess I can say that Duke's is probably the best, which is probably not saying much. The thing it has over the other 3 is that it focuses in on the character. Like, yes, we do get a new character in the form of Kugai. Guy who's there, he exists. But this is the only real special, I feel, that takes time to introspect of what has already been created. We get to see the main Yggdrasil quartet and how they started. Ryoma and Takatora's relationship before it deteriorated, and more or less him meeting up with both Yoko and Sid. It's not much, but for like the half-hour special we get, it's a decent amount compared to the what will come after it. And by extension, where the other ones are just, hey, new lock seed, use it. Regular Lemon Arms feels like a natural regression to more or less what Duke would primarily end up using. Oh, he uses a fencing app. Okay, that's enter. As a thing, and you know, there had to have been regular versions of the arms that were used by the Genesis fighter, so there was probably a cherry and a peach lock seat, so it would have been nice to also see, like, versions of those arms, not energized, but it's like fine for what it is. I also like the initial, like, if you're watching this in order, so like this would come after like the movie War for Gaim Wizard, as a first showing of the Genesis driver and its power. It's surprisingly well done, all things considered. I still think the main show also has quite the imposing and outright terrifying introduction for it, but this also works in its own way. And yeah, that's sort of Duke's is perfectly fine. It more or less does give some snippets into the past the Yggdrasil 4, but it really does desire to have more than like a half-hour running time, and that's the biggest issue here. These specials want to be more than they are, and they cannot do it in these half-hour segments with what they desire to be. It's scratching the surface without really getting too deep into it, and that's definitively that is very clear in both Zangetsu's and Knuckles. We'll get to Knuckles because that's a trip and a half. Yeah, but Zangetsu wants to explore the past of the Kirishima family. Anyway, we get a character who more or less does show up in the past, and I like how they want to make it such a big mystery about who this mysterious assailant who's attacking Yggdrasil is. Isn't like, it's obviously the girl who just showed up, who, bakes terrible apple pies. I think she does apple pies. Like, it's not a good mystery, right? Because the moment she pops up at the exact same time that this is happening, like, yeah, she did it. She's the person. It's nothing. And yeah, got trying to please the other my thoughts here, but you don't care enough about her because you barely get to know her. Like, yes, she has a connection with Takator, or from the past, but we only see a few snippets, and we don't get to spend enough time with her before she is beaten by Takator and killed. Also, you loved the Mars suit from the soccer movie. Yeah, that was a decent suit. You better get used to it because it gets reused a lot. And I mean a lot. Through these 4 things. Kugai's suit reuses. I think more or less Kugai is Saber reuses it, and more or less unsurprisingly, the girl, I'm not gonna look her name. I'll probably show a picture, but she's just person that reuses it. But it makes sort of sense to reuse it for here because she essentially just uses an apple Loxy, or Ringo as apples are known in Japan, so it being a recolor would make sense for it. And Takatora gets the watermelon Loxy. Now let me let's rephrase that. You see, the watermelon Loxy is different from the Suika Loxy because toys. Buy more toys. We deserve your money, so buy our Gatling watermelon shield, and it just doesn't look good. And more or less, I'm not bringing up much of the plot because there really isn't. You'd think for a story exploring the Kirishima past there'd be more, but not really. Takatora learns about stuff that's going on, goes back, learns that His family was up to some really bad stuff. A girl shows up and is shocked about it. They both fight. He beats her and she walks away. Then Ryoma just unceremoniously kills her. There's also just some really unsubtle foreshadowing regarding what Michi will end up doing to Takatora later in the season. Which, if you're watching this in the order of continuity that these are supposed to happen, it feels really like a punch to the noggin that more or less should not be there. And just ends as we move over to Barons, which is just Prince and the Pauper. Kaito ends up trading places with someone who looks exactly like him, and they both deal. And the main cast is shocked at more or less, Kaito being happy and all this stuff, and Kaito more or less ends up unraveling a plot that involves assassinating the kid, and it's just... This is a filler episode. I don't really like to use that, but this feels like filler. It's characters who don't matter in the grander scheme of things who shows up, and it's supposed to explore Kaito's past with his, because both of these, so technically more or less the Duke special is paired up with the Knuckles special, even though the first one happens as the first Gaiden while the other one's the last Gaiden, but they're sort of paired up in specific ways. So the Baron and Zangetsu is paired up because they deal with families, the past that they have to deal with, but it's not. I guess more or less the thing that is decent about it is we get to see the actor more or less getting to show more of what he can potentially do in a different kind of role, since he has to play the Chappelle Chopri. Again, I'm not going to remember these names. Names is exactly comedic and more or less doing all these kooky things because it's Kaito, but he's silly. Now, there's also the butler, who also gets a new farm. Well, he gets the dragon fruit arm that more or less Ryoma would end up using later, but outside of like Oren and Hideyasu having some decent things here, it's just their story. Nothing about it feels like it is important to the plot or more or less expanding on anything. I don't want to bring it up, but the Gaim Gaiden, specifically both Hearts and Mox, did this much better with the same time. They completed new story arcs, or more or less wrapped things up, rather than trying to introduce things that no one was going to care about. And that again goes for Knuckles. So Zack returns when he learns that Baron has been revived by an old friend. It is from Baron before Kaito had taken it over, because he had apparently did a ruthless takeover of the group. The friend, and sure, you'd think would be coming back for vengeance for being kicked out and his friends kind of abandoning him, but no, he idolizes him and has started a fight club to carry on his... Well, and saying this out loud, I sound like the biggest idiot ever. Like, this feels like Mad Libs. Like, oh, it's an old friend of Team Baron, specifically Zack, Peiko, and Peiko's sister, who's also now Zack's love interest, who got kicked out by Kaito after he took over, but now he idolizes him because more or less that's true strength. Look, there's a lot to unpack about Kaito. What he really did, where he was going. More or less, I don't know. I don't think anyone really understands how a person goes through it, and I think that should have been the thing. No one understands the person, so you should just do what you think is right. Right, but it's very clearly not the main thing here, because this special weirdly decides to raise the ante up, because apparently, sure, which, again, I always brought this up, but more or less, this is probably one of the dumbest villains in writer history, right? You think more or less he starts out being, and he's back for vengeance against his friends. No, he idolizes Kaito, like, what? Why? Why would he idolize him? And more or less, the tie-in is more or less Black Velvet, which was the organization that Kugai was a part of, is more or less supplying him. Why is he supplying this kid of all people? What is a giant F.U. to... You doesn't even know who the other writers are? It's just... It's just so much potential just wasted on essentially an episode that feels like it could have been more. And yes, the Jimber Marin arms doesn't look good. Look, the Jimber arms were always meant to be these archer kind of character. And more or less now all of a sudden he's boxing. It doesn't look right on it, and the special just ends. It just ends. And Zack beats Shura. He falls unconscious after beating him. And then just dances with a ghost show recollection of Kaito. Is it actually Kaito who's come back to him? Well, let's talk to him one more time, and they just dance, and that's it. That's the end of it. That's the end of this. That was supposed to be the last bit of Gaim material until the last two things we were talking about. And here, you want to know how you would finish that story? You go read a novel. I'm not only saying that reading a book is bad, but it's just like, not only was this a toy commercial, but this was also essentially a novel commercial to go read the novel to get the end of the story. Which leaves us with our last two pieces, which are actually pretty recently, 2019, and everyone's super duper ultra favorite year of 2020. Okay, so first we have the stage play, which is an adaptation of a novel in Zangetsu Gai, and which sees Takatora going to the Torquia Republic, a fantasy nation in Central Asia, where he's knocked down and sent down to the most dangerous portion of the Republic, like where the commoners and scum of society use prototype dryers and lock seeds to battle and defend themselves. What follows is half a Gaim retelling and half original content as Takatora actually interacts with basically Danza for most of Gaim's cast. There's I'm, who's basically Kota, Glacia, though funnily enough he's being portrayed by future 2 Kaiser Atsuga Masahiko. Go as Kaito, our flamboyant mercenary who gets a thing for Takatora, and Yukimura. Kagemasa is Michi, and for us who basically combines both Ryoji and Hideo. Yes. So, personality-wise, they're fine, but again, they're just kind of just retreads of characters we already know of, and that kind of also blends down to the fact of we're taking what is essentially a 50-episode season that gives us a whole bunch of motivations, characterization, and development, and just doing most of that because we get the big climactic fight between Gaim and Baron at the end for reasons, since it's not really clear because he needs to prove his ideals are true and that this whole thing was for nothing. I think while the other half deals with the Torquia Republic, and more or less after a point, Takatora just kind of leaves the other story, and it's mostly now just here where he's dealing with post-crazy Michi in the form of Kagemasa, and basically, his family, that they were all kind of evil beings. And I do mean it. That's sort of the issue with this play here. It's 2 plays kind of meshed together, and neither one is really that great. I'll give credit where credit's due. I like the acting here. It's surprisingly decent, and it does give Takatora like how far he's come from where he was initially. Not fond of the Deus Ex Machina in the form of getting the Tachidoki Luxi made for himself, but that's fine. That's kind of a decent thing here. It's interesting stuff, but it's dragged down by something, and in this case, it's the fact that it also has to feature what is essentially a 2-hour Gaim recreate, which is not terrible, but it's another issue of just wanting more. And then there's the Gaiden versus Bravo special, which really knows what it wants to be. It's not trying to carry out any more of a story. It more or less gets down to it, which is just Gaiden versus Bravo. Now, the setup is kind of one of the dumber ones, in Takatora telling Oren that Hideyasu is apparently doing stuff with Helheim fruits, which gets in a fight, but that really doesn't happen because something ends up taking him over, and now Gaiden has to fight his master to make him not evil. Look, it's 24 minutes of pure fluff, seeing the duo interacting. Again, there's a villain that Takatora ends up taking out who barely has any characterization about who she is or how she got the stuff she did get. And another freaking more. But all 3 actors kind of nicely slip back into the role, like an old suit, like they've just barely come out of it. Like seeing Hideyasu grow from the unconfident kind of person he was initially to what he is sort of now is interesting. Again, I don't think the Tyson BS40 chest was necessary. And yes, we get to sell more toys. Toys with new forms and stuff, but it's a special. I think it more or less, it's not trying to be more than what it is, and I think that's something I can give credit for. I like seeing Zangetsu Kachidoki now and not stage play inhibited by that, but yeah, these are probably the better the specials though, not by much. Again, a lot of these specials just suffer from issues that more or less are unimportant in trying to build a world without giving enough time for it. Ugh, that's tough. Next time do something with less content. But anywho, do the usual things and see you for the next series.